Okay, so today, legal forms of organization, and that's just really a fancy way to say, how do I set my business up from a legal perspective? There's lots of ways that you can organize legally, and this lecture is really designed to get you thinking about each of those forms of organization. I'm going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages to each, both tax and legal implications. And so there's a lot of good information in here. It might come across as relatively legally at some points. I'm going to try to make it as plain English as I possibly can. And just as a simple caveat to this one, this is pretty common information, meaning that if you go out and Google legal forms of organization, you're going to find 1,000 attorneys doing 1,000 YouTube, maybe 1 million attorneys doing 1 million YouTube videos on this very same topic, and they're all going to sound just about the same way that I do. So my information is by far not the end-all be-all. If you feel like you want to find something else, or you want to go beyond this lecture, it definitely is easy with legal forms of organization. So with that, let's get started. Okay, let's talk about legal forms of organization, or how you organize your business from a legal standpoint. So by operation of law, most businesses are sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship is simply a business that is owned by one person. If you just happen to start making products and start selling them, maybe you haven't even gotten your business license yet, always get your business license, you are by operation of law sole proprietorship. And really what it takes legally in order to form a sole proprietorship is you go down and you get a business license from the city that you live in. And if you're not doing business as your legal name, if you have a business name that you're operating from, like, Soapy Soaps, then you need to go down to the county recorder's office and file what's called a fictitious business name statement. You run an ad for 2 weeks in the local paper. It usually costs about $100 total between your business license and your fictitious business name, and you're good to go. The advantage of a sole proprietorship is that it is extremely easy to set up. The accounting is very simple. You receive all of the firm's profits, and so you report your profits on your personal income tax return, and so it's very seamless. You are the business, and the business is you. You are one entity under the eyes of the law. It's easy to transfer ownership of the company name and assets. You just sell the assets, and you sell the blue sky, or remember the reputation of the business. And you have freedom from interference by other stakeholders because it's just you and you are the business. However, there are some really big disadvantages of a sole proprietorship. First of all, in a sole proprietorship, because you and the business are the same under the eyes of the law, you bear all of the personal liability risk. What that means is if I have an ice cream shop, for example, and I'm a sole proprietor, and somebody slips and falls in my ice cream shop, and they need $500,000 of surgery. Maybe I don't have liability insurance, and so there's no insurance to pay for it, and so it all comes on me personally. Well, when that happens, I own a house, I have a bank account, I have a car. All of those personal assets are at risk in order to fulfill that liability to that person who had an injury in my business. Also, as a sole proprietor, you personally are subject to all of the claims of the creditors of the business. When your business owes someone money, you owe someone money. You have unlimited personal liability. I mentioned that. You receive no tax benefits as an employee because you are a sole proprietor. It is all on you personally. There's no employees. So you are taxed as the business and the employee, which means that you pay your own Social Security and you pay your own Medicare tax. So it increases the tax that you pay through a process that we call self-employment tax. You paying both the employer and the employee share of Social Security and the employer and the employee share of Medicare. Death or incapacity of the owner terminates the business. If you can't go on, the business cannot either. The sole proprietorship is limited in terms of how much you can capitalize or how much money you can put into the business. It's limited to your capital and your ability to get a loan that could perpetuate the business or grow the business. And the business, this isn't really an advantage or a disadvantage, but it's taxed as business income on your own personal income taxes. And I should say sole proprietorships are by and large the largest number of small businesses in the United States. Over 90% of small business in the United States, or businesses in the United States, are sole proprietorships, simply because they're easy to form. Partnership. Think about a partnership as a sole proprietorship times the number of people that are in business together. So it's a legal entity formed by 2 or more co-owners who carry on the business for profit. The only qualifications that you need to be a partner is you have to be of legal age to contract, that's 18. Ideally, you want somebody who's honest, healthy, capable, and compatible to your personality and business style. In order to determine compatibility, you might want to ask yourselves, what's our business concept? Do we need both of us or more than one of us to run? What is this team going to do for the business? How are we going to structure ownership? Is it 50-50? If you don't have a partnership agreement by operation of law, it's 50-50 or 33-33-33, 25-20. It is a equal partnership if you don't have a partnership agreement. Why do we need each other? Are you going into a partnership with your best friend because you're best friends, or are you going into a partnership with your best friend because you have a talent and they have a talent and the business needs both of your talents to be successful? Sometimes people enter into partnerships with people who should really be employees rather than business partners. And then how do our lifestyles differ? Partnerships fail it's like being married, right? And partnerships are marriages without all that love and affection stuff. So they fail at a higher rate than marriages. So it's really important to look at your lifestyles. 2 young single people starting a business together is great. You're both willing to put in 80 hours a week or whatever. But what happens when one of you gets in a relationship and one of you starts a family and the other one is still willing to put in 80 hours, but the partner who has discovered that they have a life may not be interested in doing that anymore. So you really have to think about those kinds of things if you are planning to enter into a partnership with someone. Again, you want to have a partnership agreement that specifically lays out the rights and duties of the partners, who's bringing what into the partnership, who gets what. And you want to understand that within partnership, each partner has what's called agency power. And that means that each partner has the ability to tie the partnership to any kind of legal agreement that they enter into, regardless of whether the other partners want to do it or not. If I'm in a partnership with my best friend and we're selling ice cream, and I want to avoid selling at the big chain. I want to stay out of Walmart and I want to stay out of Target. I want to sell to small mom and pops and Fraser Farms and Whole Foods and things like that. And my partner goes and signs an agreement with Walmart. I'm now tied to Walmart. I don't have the right to say that wasn't part of our plan. We want out of this agreement. So the partners have to be on the same page because any of them can tie the entire partnership to a legal agreement. So partnerships and sole proprietorships really are taxed as the individuals and the business are the same entity. The corporation option actually creates a legal entity for, under the eyes of the law, a person that functions as the business. And so the corporation is a legal entity that provides limited liability for its owners. Owners also called shareholders. And when we say legal entity, what we're basically saying is that the organization recognized as being a separate legal entity. So your corporation can be born through articles of incorporation. It can die through articles of dissolution, and it pays taxes every year, just like you and I have to do as people. So the most common type of organization, or the regular corporation, is referred to as a C corporation or regular corporation. It's chartered by the state and taxed by the federal government as a separate legal entity. In order to incorporate, you have to file what are called articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State in the state where you wish to organize. I'm not going to go through all of these, but the articles of incorporation have some very specific requirements that you have to include. If you're going to do this, I always would recommend using some kind of legal software, Rocket Lawyer, LegalZoom, something like that. So with a corporation, corporations are not owned by owners, they're owned by shareholders. Each shareholder receives stock, which is the ownership document in a corporation. And the number of shares you have is commensurate to your level of ownership. As a shareholder, the level of ownership that you have dictates how much control you have over the company. It limits your liability to your investment in the company. So if I invest $10,000 in my business, my overall liability or what I can lose is that $10,000. And ownership can be transferred without affecting the company's operations. All I have to do is sell my stock to someone else. So when we're thinking about forms of organization, there's some factors that influence the choice of structure. Your initial cost and requirement. Forming a corporation is more expensive than forming a sole proprietorship or a partnership. The level of liability. You have unlimited liability as a partner or a sole proprietor unless you purchase general liability insurance, which I would always recommend if you stand to have some kind of liability as a sole proprietor. It's not expensive and it generally is good blanket coverage, is not that too bad. As a corporation, you have limited liability. You're limited to your investment in the company. The continuity of the business. Remember that partnerships and sole proprietorships can end when someone decides that they want to go away for whatever reason, or they become incapacitated or whatever. Transferability is much easier with a corporation. You just sell your shares. The control of management. The more shareholders you have, the more partners you have, the more diluted decision-making becomes. And so if you want to have a lot of control, you want to have a very few number of people or one managing the operations of the company. In terms of raising capital, if you need to bring money into your business, if you need investors, you have to go the corporation route. Investors are only going to invest for equity or shares of your company. In order to have shares, you need to have some form of corporation. If you're going the partnership or sole proprietorship route, you're limited to the capital that you bring into the business and getting loans or debts. And then income taxes. With corporations, you file your own personal income tax and the corporate income tax. What happens is the corporation makes its money. The money is divided among the shareholders. And so as an owner of a corporation, both you pay corporate tax and then that money is given to you that money is distributed to you as a shareholder, and then you pay personal tax as well. So we refer to what happens with corporations as dual taxation because you are taxed twice, as opposed to a sole proprietor who just pays tax from their business earnings on their individual income tax. So, sole proprietorship. Again, you are the business is you, so you pay your business tax on your personal income tax. Business does not pay separate tax. Same with a partnership. The money that's earned by the partnership is distributed to each of the partners, and then the partners each pay tax on that. Corporation pays its own tax. The money that is earned by the corporation is distributed to the shareholders, and then the shareholders also pay personal income tax on what they get in the distribution. Problem with that? Dual taxation. A couple of specialized forms of organization. If you have a partnership and you want to avoid that unlimited liability for each of the partners, you can create what's called a limited partnership. In a limited partnership, there is a general partner who is the person that is active in the business. They are personally liable for the debts. And then you have investors who refer to as limited partners, and they're simply investors. So they're not active in the business. They just receive income from their investment. And their liability is limited to whatever their investment in the business is. So if I own 10% of a business as a limited partner and the business goes kaput, the most I lose is that 10%, or translate it to a dollar amount, $10,000. The most I lose is that $10,000. And then income or loss is a portion to each partner based on their level of ownership. Another specialized form of organization is an S Corp. S Corps are C Corps that have petitioned the IRS for special status. And what happens with an S Corp is that you are taxed as a partnership, but you receive the liability protection of a corporation. And so these are the S Corp, and I'm going to talk about the LLC next, are referred to as pass-through organizations. And the idea is that the money flows through the organization to the investors, and the investors pay tax on what they receive. And so there's no taxation of the organization separate. So it gets rid of that double tax that corporations have. And S Corps are designed for smaller corporations, so you can have no more than 75 shareholders. All of the shareholders have to be individuals or trusts. A corporation cannot hold stock in an S Corp. Only one class of stock can be outstanding. The S Corp has to be a domestic corporation, which means that it has to do business in the state where it's domiciled. They have to operate on a fiscal calendar year basis. You cannot have foreign investors as in a S Corp, so no non-resident alien stockholders. Somebody who holds a green card can be an investor, but you can't have a foreign investor who, say, lives in France and is just putting money in the U.S. business. Can't do that. The benefits of the S Corp, limited liability, you're limited to your investment in the corporation, and the money that you receive avoids that double taxation that you have with corporations. Limited liability companies, also referred to as LLCs, are corporations where the company has limited liability, but they pay personal income taxes on the business profits. Limited liability companies can be set up as single-person limited liability companies or partnerships, depending on how they work or how you set it up. They are very easy to set up. You can do it, with the help of a piece of software in a day. Definitely flexible, and there are tax advantages to LLC. Flexible with an LLC in the sense that with a S Corp, I am limited to, let's say I've got 3 partners. And so we set up our S Corp as 33% partners in each of for each person. And one of the partners decides that they want to go off to Tibet and find themselves. And so they say, okay, well, I'm going to leave for Tibet for a year. You guys you guys can have my money in the company. With an S Corp, you can't do that. With an S Corp, whatever ownership you have is what you have to receive. So if one partner is doing more, there's no flexibility to say, take some of my money. With a limited liability company, you can. This year, maybe the other partner and I get everything. And then the next year it's 33, 33, 33 again. And maybe the next year, 2 of us decide to go find ourselves and one person gets 100%. So there's a lot of flexibility with the limited liability company that there isn't with the other forms. The disadvantage of a limited liability company is the fact that they haven't been around very long, so there's not a lot of case law. So a lot of times attorneys don't really love limited liabilities, and they'll try to talk you into an S Corp just because there's more case law that supports S Corps. Accountants like limited liability companies though. I have 2 limited liability companies, very easy to manage. So I don't make recommendations, but I've found them to be super easy to deal with. Some additional specialized forms of organization. Benefit corporations, or B Corps, incorporate traditional for-profit model with an identified social or environmental benefit. B Corps tend to be more of a certification in California. There is something called a public benefit corporation, but they're really rare. And most of the B Corps that you see tend to be more certifications rather than legal forms of organization. Typically, though, in a B Corp, the shareholders have the ability to hold the directors accountable for failing to create a positive material social benefit to society. And that can be social or environmental. So there's a little bit more accountability to shareholders with the B Corp. And then a low profit limited liability company. These, I'm going to say, are not legal in California. They might be someday, or you might be in a state where this might be possible. And so I just want to tell you what that is. Low L3Cs, or low profit limited liability companies, are organized primarily for furthering a charitable purpose. So they can't significantly pursue financial returns. Think about Goodwill. Goodwill is a charity that's designed to benefit a specific group of people. Goodwill is a charity, but they have the Goodwill stores. The Goodwill stores operate to help support the charity, but they make a small profit that helps to further that helps to scale the Goodwill stores concept. And that is an example of how an L3C might work. So those are your legal forms of organization. Lots to digest there. You might want to slow down. I might have gone a little bit too fast at times, but definitely take a read through all of those legal forms and make the decision that makes the most sense for you and your business, the amount of liability that you have with respect to your products and services, and the comfort level of how you want to operate from a legal perspective.